Sinister true Apple AirTag stories revealed. Terrifying encounters with hidden threats. Lily's heart raced as she stared at her phone, the glow illuminating the creeping dread creeping through her. An unknown Apple AirTag is tracking your movement. Her fingers trembled above the screen. The words felt like ice in her veins. She glanced outside, and her bright suburban neighborhood now felt claustrophobic. Faces she once knew shifted into masks of suspicion, eyes boring into her during the afternoon strolls, while her children played innocently in the yard. Had they noticed too? Over the last week, unsettling memories clawed at her. A family had vanished a few blocks away, and the news had flooded her small world with terror. The snippets of stories about missing persons buzzed in her mind like hornets. Lily shook it off, trying to swallow her fear. Must be a glitch. But as the afternoon sun dipped behind her once comforting home, darkness crept into her heart. When dusk fell, her home felt different. She unlocked the door, seeing something dark lurking beneath her welcome mat. The folded note lay there like a serpent. Stay alert, not everyone has good intentions. A concerned neighbor. The words chilled her bones. Who sent this? Why? Panic surged, and she felt her breath quicken as paranoia sliced through her normality. Was someone watching? Lily strained to see down the street but saw only shadows moving with the wind, the laughter of neighboring children suddenly echoing eerily in her ears. Every night since that text, sleep had skittered out of reach. Each time she closed her eyes, her mind conjured a creature from childhood tales, a dark mask lurking in shadows, reeling in families while they slept. Something primal warned her to stay awake, yet exhaustion dragged at her eyelids. Lily woke restless, morning light doing nothing but amplifying her anxiety. The feeling of being watched had morphed into a pulse, throbbing in her chest. Desperate to find answers, she reached out to friends, realizing with each call just how alone she felt. Their laughter echoed hollowly, as if a glass wall separated them from her reality. At community meetings, hushed conversations swirled around her like whispers of a ghost. The joyful gatherings were now rife with an undercurrent of fear. Everyone she'd once trusted suddenly seemed tied to this dark web of secrets. One evening she readied herself, the gnawing thought of confronting that masked figure from her nightmares growing too strong to ignore. Just as she steeled herself, the door swung open, raw night air rushing in. 5 figures stood before her, cloaked in black, faces hidden. Time froze. Her heart hammered in her chest, the shadows elongating their forms menacingly. Lily. A voice slithered through the darkness, and an icy shiver traced her spine. We've been watching you. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The figures stepped closer, the air thick with fear, as her mind screamed. Who could she trust? Only the flickering porch light bore witness to the dread closing in. Those familiar neighboring homes faded away, leaving only shadows that whispered her name. She knew the danger was closer than it appeared. In this tranquil suburb, an unseen horror lay hidden, and it hungered for her family. Would she expose the truth, or would she find herself lost in the shadows forever? The figures moved like shadows, their cloaks billowing in the night as they stepped onto her porch. Lily was paralyzed, stuck between the door and the chaos swirling in her mind. The voice continued, calm but menacing. Don't be afraid, Lily. We're here to help you. Help? The word rang hollow. The heavy atmosphere was loaded with something darker than fear. It reeked of malice. Who are you? She managed, her voice trembling. We are the Watchers, another voice interjected, guttural and low. We see the things others do not, the threats lurking just beyond your sight. Lily felt her heart race. The shadows tightened around her, making the porch feel like a coffin. She fought the urge to scream, thinking of her children asleep inside. This couldn't be happening. She had to shield them from whatever was happening here. "What do you want?" she whispered, heart thudding against her ribs. The first figure stepped closer, the light catching the edge of a face obscured by darkness. "We need you to listen carefully," he said. "You're in danger. Someone is targeting you." Panic surged through her like a tidal wave. "Targeting me? Why?" "Because you're close to discovering a truth that others want buried," he said, eyes narrowing. "We've seen them. We've followed the patterns. They come for families like yours." "What do you mean?" Words tumbled from her lips as confusion tangled with fear. "What patterns?" Before they could answer, a distant sound shattered the tension. A child's laughter echoed down the street, suddenly chilling in the context of her impending doom. The figures stiffened, their heads tilting slightly, eyeing the darkness beyond the porch. "Do you hear that?" one of them hissed. Lily felt the world tilt. "What about my children?" she gasped, her instincts clawing at her reality. "What are you saying?" The cloaked figures exchanged glances, a silent communication that sent dread curling in her stomach. "They're not safe. We need to move," the first figure insisted, urgency bleeding through his tone. "Move? Where?" she exclaimed, the walls around her closing in. The calmness of her home felt like a trap. She turned to glance back at her children's bedroom window, shrouded in darkness. "I can't leave them." "They'll come for them," he said, voice a mere whisper now, steeped in fear of its own. "You need to trust us. This is bigger than you know." Lily's heart raced into hysteria. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a flicker of hope. "I can call for help." "No." The urgency snapped in the air, forcing her to look back. "They are watching, always watching. You can only protect your family if you follow us." Torn between instinct and despair, her fingers trembled above the doorframe. She took a breath, the sweet scent of honeysuckle from her garden clashing with the acrid smell of fear. "What if this is a trap?" she asked, desperation filtering her every word. The figures grew tense. "It's already a trap," one warned. "Your only way out is to come with us." In that moment, the porch light flickered violently, plunging them into darkness. Lily's breath caught in her throat. For one instant, she saw a flicker of movement in the shadows outside. Something lurking, something watching. The urgency surged. "You have to decide, Lily," the first figure urged, stepping closer. "Before it's too late." Before she could react, the world around her boiled over with fear. The figures melted into the shadows, leaving her alone on the porch, heartbeat pounding like a drum in a funeral. She was on the brink of discovery, but at what cost? Lily's mind raced as she faced the undeniable truth. The monsters weren't just in her nightmares, they lived in the daylight, buried within familiar faces. She was trapped in a world of smiling neighbors and empty homes. Deep down, she knew that leaving meant abandoning everything she loved, but staying might cost her even more. The question echoed in her mind, hollow and consuming. Could she trust the Watchers, or was she running toward her ultimate doom? As the last remnants of their presence faded into the still night, the whispers of the darkness echoed louder, threatening to collapse her reality. What would she choose? The shadows crept closer, waiting for her answer. Lily's breath came in sharp bursts as the weight of silence crashed down around her. The shadows seemed to pulse, their darkness thickening like fog, and she felt a cold sweat bead on her brow. The glimmer of her children's bedroom window was a beacon, pulling her toward the warmth of their innocence. But something out there, the lurking thing, the unseen threat, kept her tethered to the porch. She glanced down the street, the familiar houses now appearing foreboding and alien. A stillness hung in the air, the kind that makes every shadow appear to shift and breathe. The laughter from moments ago echoed eerily, distorting into something mocking. "Please, just tell me what to do," she called out into the blackness, her voice breaking. Her heart pounding like a war drum, she felt as if she were standing on the precipice of something limitless, something terrifying. The figures had vanished, yet their warning clung to her mind, heavy and suffocating. What had they seen? What danger was heading her way? Suddenly, a shuffling sound echoed from the side of the house. She froze. Her instincts screamed at her to run inside, to lock the door, to gather her children. But the fear rooted her to the spot, and as she squinted into the darkness, dread pooled in her stomach. It wasn't just a sound. It was the scratching of nails against wood. A cold wave of horror washed over her, and she moved instinctively, retreating toward the door. Yet something deep within her whispered that leaving without knowing was a risk greater than facing the unknown. Then she heard it, a voice, faint and raspy, creeping into her ears. "Help us. They're coming." It was her daughter's voice, distorted and panicked. The words coiled around her heart, tugging ruthlessly at her. "No, no, no," she whispered, backing away from the shadows. "This can't be real." Terror seized her, clawing at her throat. She fumbled for her phone, and the dim light flooded over the porch like a lifeline. "Mommy?" came the voice again, clearer now, but with a chilling undertone. "Mommy, they're here, we're scared." Chills raced up her spine. The light revealed nothing, but she felt the pulse of fear reverberating through her veins. "Hold on, I'm coming," she shouted, flipping open the door and sprinting inside. As she reached the hallway, the laughter echoed again, this time malicious and echoing like a taunt. Each step toward her children's room felt like wading through thick mud, her heart racing faster than her feet could move. The house felt different. It groaned under the weight of something unspeakable. "Mommy!" a voice cried, only it wasn't her daughter's. It was a deep, unnerving tone, calling, beckoning from the shadows beyond the baby gate, the dark tightness in the corridor squeezing the air from her lungs. Lily pressed against the hallway wall, wrists trembling, eyes darting to the children's door. "Stay in your room, I'm coming!" In a blink, the whispers swirled around her, a cacophony of terror. Faces flashed in her mind, neighbors she'd waved to, people she'd known for years, now warped and predatory, their smiles twisting into leering grins. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket, the screen lighting up. It was a message. "They've found you, get out." Adrenaline coursed through her. She dashed to the children's room, knowing she had only moments before. Whatever darkness had come for them would seep inside. But as she reached the door, a chilling thought struck her. What if she wasn't the prey at all? What if this was all a trap to lure her in? With a pounding heart and trembling hands, she gripped the doorknob, every instinct screaming at her to turn back. What awaited her behind that door? Would her children be safe? Or had they already come for them? In that moment of hesitation, a shadow slipped along the wall and the quiet laughter echoed louder. Would she open the door, or was it already too late? Lily's hand shook against the doorknob, cold metal biting into her palm. The laughter, now dangerously close, twisted her stomach. Time crawled, yet the sense of urgency burned like a fire at her back. "Mommy?" Her daughter's voice again, sweet and innocent. But now it trembled, tinged with an edge of terror that made her blood run cold. The darkness within beckoned as she hesitated. Her children waited on the other side, but what if the shadows had already consumed them? A flicker of movement caught her eye. Something wet and dark slithered along the wall, vanishing before she could pinpoint it. "No!" Lily shouted, pulling the door open with a desperate yank. The room was bathed in an unnatural twilight. Her children's forms huddled in the corner, wide eyes glistening with fear. Her heart surged until she saw it, something shifting beneath the bed, a mass suffocating the air with a putrid stench. The figure blurred in the dim light, limbs too long and hair matted as if it had crawled from a grave. "Get away from there!" She rushed forward, but her feet felt buried in mud. No, not mud. A creeping sensation enveloped her ankles. She looked down to see tendrils of shadow rising like smoke, anchoring her in place. "Mommy, please!" the children cried, but the beast beneath the bed lurched forward. A grotesque face peering out, eyes white and hollow, mouth twisted into an unseen grin. It unleashed a low growl, reverberating through her bones. "No!" she screamed, muscles straining against the weight of dread holding her back. The darkness tightened its grip, each moment stretching like an eternity. With a surge of will, she broke free, lunging toward her children. "Get out of the room!" she shouted over her shoulder. "Run to the kitchen!" Terror-fueled adrenaline ignited her legs, allowing her to close the distance. As they bolted together, she felt something cold wrap around her wrist. Lily twisted, breaking away from its grasp, but not before sensing its chilling breath, like the grave. Her children were mere steps ahead, fleeing into the flickering light of the kitchen. Just as she broke through the threshold, her phone buzzed again, another message frantically glowing in the dark. "They're here. They'll find you. Don't look back." Skidding to a halt, panic crashing over her like a wave, she turned around, eyes darting to the end of the hallway. Shadows throbbed with vibrancy, alive and vast, spilling from the children's room like ink. Was it an illusion? Flashes of her neighbors' faces danced within the dark, but now their mouths moved in silent screams. They knew. They were aware of the threat that had long been lurking. "Mommy!" Her children's voices pierced her panic, grounding her. She had to protect them, but the shadows felt insatiable, stretching with dark claws. "Stay behind me!" she yelled, feeling her own heart racing in tandem with the looming presence. The back door was directly in her line of sight. A thin hope shimmered there, promising safety, but burdened with uncertainty. They could escape, but would they make it? With every ounce of determination, the three of them inched toward freedom. The air grew heavier as unseen forces gathered, invisible hands clawing at their heels, whispering in a chorus of malice. "Hurry! Hurry!" Just when they reached the threshold, the house trembled, emitting a low growl like the one from beneath the bed, more guttural and alive. In that moment, Lily obscured the escape route with a protective shield of her body, heart pounding in her ears. What awaited them outside? They could risk everything for a glimpse of freedom, or they could turn back, receding into the dark safety of the house's familiar horrors. The choice loomed heavy. Then a thought crashed into her. "Lily, what if you're leading them into greater danger?" And before she could even register fear, a shadow lunged forward. Would they be lost to darkness forever, or could they slip away into the night? The choice hung in the air, choking them. Panic seized Lily as the shadow lunged, a black blur detonating forward. She barely had time to comprehend before her children screamed, the sound fracturing her resolve. In a desperate instinct, she threw herself in front of them, instinctively shielding them with her body. But the grip of darkness was relentless. The shadow twisted, morphing into a spindly arm reaching out to her. The air wrapped around it like a vice, pressuring her resolve. "Run!" she roared, the command raw and primal, eyes locked on the children, who stood frozen in terror, paralyzed by the encroaching threat. Suddenly, a wall of shadow slammed against her, knocking the wind from her lungs. The world spun as she hit the floor, gasping for breath. The darkness swam like ink around her, cold and suffocating. She clawed at the air, feeling the specter's icy fingers graze her arm, and the familiar chill that crawled beneath her skin, whispering secrets of despair. "Get out!" The children's little faces loomed above her, eyes wide, glistening with unvented terror, their tiny hands clutching each other. She could see them at the edge of her vision, tears streaking down their cheeks, but they hadn't moved. The growl surfaced again, a low vibration throbbing through the floor, stirring something primal within her. Lily pushed against the ground, eyes darting to the back door, the door that led to freedom. "Please, move!" Fright gripped her voice, the urgency resonating in the still air. At last they reacted. The children scrambled, their feet pattering against the wooden floor like frantic drumbeats. They charged toward the door, desperation glimmering in their frightened expressions. With each step, the shadows recoiled, hissing like steam escaping a wound. The atmosphere thickened, a tension vibrating through the air as the malevolence surged. "Come on!" she beckoned, fear clawing at her thoughts as she surged forward, adrenaline coursing through her veins. One last push, one breath before the storm. As she scrambled to her feet, arms a whirlwind of motion, she felt a sharp pull at her hair. The darkness was not finished yet. A sudden weight dragged her down, grappling with her, filled with malice and intent. This was not just some passing horror. It had purpose. It was hungry. Lily looked back, saw the beast trying to assert its claim. "Keep running," she screamed, full of raw panic as she tore away from the tendrils grasping at her. Each step echoed with the rhythm of impending dread, pounding against her chest. The door was within reach, a beacon of flickering hope, but as soon as she crossed the threshold, a deafening bang reverberated behind her. The wood splintered, and the creature howled, a sound beyond mere animalistic fury. It was a sound of loss, of anger, annihilated hopes. Stumbling forward, they raced into the night, breathless and wild. The chill air bit at them as they ran into the uncertain darkness, the streetlights flickering like dying stars overhead. They were free. But were they really out of danger? "Mommy, what was that?" her daughter gasped, tears streaming down her face like a river of fear. I don't know," Lily stammered, catching her breath while shielding her children behind the nearest car. The shadows loomed at the windows, swirling and fuming, filling the air with a suffocating dread. Those eyes, not merely belonging to something lurking but something sentient, watched them through the darkness, a predator tasting their fear. Suddenly her phone buzzed again, insistently drawing her attention. Heart racing, she pulled it from her pocket, bracing for more ominous words. But as she read the message, a different kind of dread seized her. The lights, the people outside. They bore warnings that sent chills down her spine. "Hide, they're hunting in pairs." "Mommy." The whisper drifted between them, fragile like glass. The shadows were shifting again, now moving across the road, slithering to the corners. They were not free. They had only entered the next stage of terror. Lily felt the familiar grip of fear as she shoved her children closer. "We have to find a place to hide, now!" What new horror awaited them in the night? Was their journey only beginning? The answers lurked in the shadows, feeding on their unfulfilled terror. The real battle had just begun. Lily squeezed her children, their small bodies trembling against her. Everything felt wrong, like the very air had turned hostile. The shadows danced, wrapping around the streetlights, breathing life into the darkness. Panic gnawed at her insides. "Mommy, please." Her son whimpered, his voice barely above a whisper, more broken than she'd ever heard. Each delicate sound seemed to set the shadows in motion, moving closer. She glanced around, searching through the dim light for somewhere to hide. A nearby alley yawned, a mere sliver of darkness to the naked eye. It beckoned desperately. "This way!" Lily bolted for it, pulling the kids with her as they plunged into the blackness. The moment they crossed the threshold, the world outside turned bleak, as if the lights had been extinguished. Only the sound of their shallow breaths echoed. The alley still smelled of garbage, but it was better than the hunt. They pressed against the cold brick wall, seeking refuge. "Look," Lily breathed, pointing to the dumpster, its lid slightly ajar. "We can fit in there." "No!" her daughter cried, eyes wide with fright. "What if it—" "It's better than out there. We have to." Lily hushed her voice, the urgency clawing at her throat. She didn't want to remember how close they had just come to being caught. They needed to find a moment of safety. With trembling hands, she opened the dumpster lid, fighting the pungent odor rising up to greet her. She motioned for the children to enter, heart racing with every tick of the clock, every rustle of the shadows just beyond their hiding spot. They scrambled inside, her son whimpering softly. Lily felt the weight of the world pressing down on them as she crouched beside them. Silence wrapped around them like a tight noose, but then the low growl returned. It echoed off the walls, vibrating through her bones, reverberating deeper than just being scared. It was alive and hungry. "Mommy!" A petrified whisper shot from her son, his face pale, eyes as wide as saucers. "What is it?" Lily's heart raced. "Shh, it's okay," she tried to assure him, her voice trembling as much as her grip on their arms. She scanned the narrow alley, praying that whatever hunted them wouldn't enter. The frigid air felt like a predator, inching closer. Suddenly, a shadow flickered at the end of the alley, and her breath caught. It was huge, On four legs, its form twisted and hunched, dark against the dim light. The growling intensified, morphing into a harrowing howl that slashed through the stillness. Mommy? Her daughter whimpered, grasping her tight. No matter what happens, you stay quiet, she whispered fiercely, heart hammering in her chest. You understand? She felt them nodding, eyes glued on the apparition. The creature's ears perked up, glistening in the darkness, sniffling the air. It moved closer, each step deliberate, searching. Lily's mind raced. Why couldn't she hear footsteps in the alleyway? Where was everyone else? Where had the world gone? Suddenly the creature paused, its head tilting, as if it sensed something, a glimmer of hope, or perhaps a deeper hunger. Just then her phone buzzed again, jolting her from thought. No, not now. The shadow shifted, drawn by the sound. Mommy! Her son squeaked, as the creature lunged forward, a blur of carbon dark. The dumpster was the only shield against its wrath. She tightened her grip around the kids, her body ready for the inevitable clash. What would happen if the darkness overcame them? What horrors awaited as Lily pressed them deeper into the garbage, heart pounding? Would they escape this hell? The answer felt just out of reach, buried beneath layers of shadow and terror. A shudder ran through Lily's body as she pressed her children deeper into the refuse. The growl of the creature reverberated through her, a living nightmare that gnawed at the edges of her sanity. The splintered whispers of the past filled her mind, memories of bright days and laughter now overshadowed by this darkness. Was she truly about to lose everything? The creature's breath was heavy and primal, filling the alley with an all-consuming dread. There was no escape in sight. It had them trapped, closing in from all sides. Rank smells surged around them, mingling with Lily's rising panic. She couldn't take her eyes off the distant form moving like liquid shadow, growing ever closer. Suddenly a chilling clang echoed through the alley, something metallic scraping against the damp concrete. The noise sparked a glimmer of hope. Maybe it attracted the creature's attention. Maybe it could buy them a few precious seconds. She held her breath, praying it would work. The growl subsided temporarily, replaced by the creature's frantic sniffing. It paused again, ears twitching, then veered sharply in the direction of the sound. For a moment, time felt suspended, fear devouring each heartbeat. Would this diversion be enough? Lily clutched her children closer, every muscle in her body tense. Her heart raced as the seconds ticked by. Her son's wide eyes reflected her own dread. Her daughter's whimper pierced her soul. "Stay quiet," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. But the creature was relentless. It whirled back towards them, spotting the dumpster. Its growl erupted again, raw and furious. A jolt of terror coursed through her as it came closer, claws scraping against the gravel. The haunting howl echoed, demanding. As if it could sense their presence, Lily quickly scanned their surroundings, searching desperately for a way out. It was pointless to think. The alley's walls were slick with grime, towering over them, narrowing their world. She took a breath, planning to climb over the side, but pounded fists of fear gripped her heart. Then a new sound pierced through the chaos. A distant siren wailed, slicing through the night. It wrapped around her like a lifeline, soothing the panic for a moment. Her mind raced. Could it be possible? Were they close enough for help to arrive? But the creature responded to the sound too, its growls shifting into something more furious, as if it were the only threat left that could ever matter. The shadows around them became a prison, contracting as the sirens seemed to grow louder, the promise of salvation drawing nearer. "Keep still," Lily hissed, her eyes locked on the creature. It shifted, muscles rippling beneath its fur as it prowled towards them with a predatory finesse. Her heart hammered as she formulated a desperate plan. If she could distract it long enough, even for just a few seconds, she might get them all out. With shaky hands, she fumbled for the lid of the dumpster, preparing to throw it wide open. The thought of festering trash and filth curling around her children made her stomach churn, but there was no time left for hesitation. They had to escape. "On 3, she whispered, adrenaline coursing through her veins. 1, 2. The lid flung open just as the creature lunged, a blur of dark fury unleashed. the air filled with the sound of its fury, snarls and the thud of flesh against the dumpster. But just as hope flickered within her grasp, a shriek ripped through the night, a haunting, desperate sound that was not from the creature but came from her children. Lily's breath caught in her throat, eyes wide. What had she done? "Mommy!" her daughter shouted, broken and terrified as she pointed to something or someone behind her. Before she could comprehend, dread seized her heart as she turned, her body frozen with fear. What had she unleashed upon them? What awaited in the oppressive shadows behind her? The darkness shifted, darker than before, and what slinked from it was far more unsettling than anything they had faced. Lily knew it was only a matter of time before the truth would come crashing in, turning their world upside down. The creature wasn't the only threat lurking in the shadows. What awaited them could change everything. Lily's heart pounded against her ribcage, each beat a reminder of the danger creeping closer. She turned, dread pooling in her gut as she peered into the suffocating darkness. Her daughter's outstretched finger quivered, pointing toward a shadow coiling against the alley wall. "What is it?" her son whimpered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," she managed to croak, panic squeezing her throat. The figure slithered forward, its outline a morbid outline in the dim light. Was it human? Or something far worse? The creature snarled again, a guttural sound that seemed to vibrate deep within her bones. But the shadow behind her children was growing clearer now, an unsettling amalgamation of sinew and flesh, twisted in a grotesque form that made her stomach churn. "Run!" She didn't think. She shouted, instinct overpowering logic. But before they could move, the creature lunged, slashing through the air with claws glinting in the dim light. Lily barely reacted in time. "Get back!" She pushed her children toward the dumpster's jagged edges, using her body as a shield. The shadow twisted and turned, diving towards them, revealing eyes that burned with a feral hunger. They were not alone. "Hurry!" She turned, the shadows crawling across the walls, creeping closer with every breath. Behind her, the creature snarled, distracted for a moment, thrusting itself toward the original noise. "We have to climb." But as her son grabbed her arm, the cold grip of something slimy wrapped around her leg. Panic squeezed her throat tighter than a vice. She looked down just in time to see an appendage slink away, a slick trail of darkness retreating into the deeper shadows. A scream threatened to escape her lips, but she swallowed it back. She couldn't show weakness. Not now. "Mommy!" her daughter cried, the pleading tone slicing through the air. The sirens in the distance still rang out, but now they felt more like a taunting melody. Salvation was close, yet felt impossibly far. Her vision blurred around the edges, drowning in shadows. "Let's go!" She clawed her way over the dumpster, dragging her children behind her. Just as they struggled to find their footing, a blinding light from above illuminated the alley. Lily squinted toward the source, hope mingling with imminent despair. There, framed against the jagged rooftops, stood a pair of figures, police officers with flashlights. The promise of help wrapped around her like a blanket. "Over here!" she screamed, desperation spilling from her lips. The officers moved forward, focused on the alley. The creatures paused, confused by the sudden brightness. Lily's breath hitched in hope, the sirens now drowning out their growls. But then, the figures in the light froze. One raised a hand, pointing at her with eyes wide in horror. "Stay back!" the officer shouted. Lily's heart dropped. "What? Why?" "Get away from that thing!" the other one yelled, backing away. Confusion surged. "What do you mean?" She turned to look behind her, adrenaline crashing like waves as she caught sight of another presence replacing the darkness, a set of jagged teeth glimmering wetly in the light. Then it hit her, the chilling reality of their situation. "Mommy!" her daughter shrieked again, but this time it was more than just fear. It was pure panic, echoed by her son's terrified whimper. The officers, now fully aware of the true threat in the shadows, began to retreat, eyes darting around, scanning frantically for any escape. They weren't here to help at all. Something shifted inside Lily. They weren't the ones in control. This place, these threats, they had brought death with them. Then an even darker form crept forward, unraveling the nightmare they had tried so desperately to flee. The flickering light danced on that monstrous shape, revealing splotches of blood and bones twisted into grotesque mockeries of humanity. Lily's breath quickened. She had to act, to find a way to save her children, even if it cost her everything. But before she could dive deeper into her erratic thoughts, the shadows surged, and the world erupted into chaos. What would she sacrifice to protect her children from the horrors that now surrounded them? The darkness shook with sinister laughter, a sound that twisted something deep inside Lily. The officers were stumbling backward, the flashlight beam trembling as they retreated into the alley, abandoning them. Her heart raced, her body was on fire with a primal urge. She couldn't let her children see how terrified she was. "Hold on to me," she cried, grabbing both their hands. The weight of fear dragged her down, but she couldn't falter. Behind her, the shadows clawed at the scraps of light, hungry and relentless. "Mommy, what's happening?" Her son whimpered, his grip tightening. "Just stay close." The creature writhed and lunged, slashing through the air again. This time it caught the light. Lily's breath froze in her throat. The face of a human twisted in pain and fury loomed above them, a long maw lined with sharp teeth, stained with what looked like fresh blood. "Run!" The command burst from her lips and she started sprinting down the alley. The shadows flickered around them, dance partners to a deathly waltz. The fluorescent streetlights overhead swayed like dying stars. "Don't let go," Lily shouted, adrenaline surging through her veins like electricity. They rounded a corner, the sudden change in direction disorienting but necessary. Behind them she could hear the guttural sounds of the creature, the echoes of its pursuit sending shivers down her spine. No more, she wouldn't let it take her children, wouldn't let it feast on their fears. A glimmer caught her eye ahead, a door barely hanging on its hinges. The words, "Abandon all hope," barely visible underneath decades of grime and decay. It was a desperate measure, but desperation was better than certain death. "Here!" she yelled, bursting through the door and dragging her kids inside. The room swallowed them in darkness thick and suffocating. The faint sounds from outside were muted, replaced by the heavy thud of their heartbeats. Lily held her children tightly, willing them to remain silent, to trust her. Every quiet breath felt like an eternity. Her hands searched the wall for a switch, a source of light. Shadows danced across the surface, shapes twisting like hands reaching for her. The air grew cold, an unsettling presence thickening around them. "Do you hear that?" her daughter whispered, tears glistening on her cheeks. The scrape of claws against the concrete grew louder, so close it made her want to scream. If they could only find a way out. "Mom!" Her son's voice quivered, breaking her concentration. "It's coming!" "No!" she stammered, dread pooling back into her gut as she scanned the room frantically. The door they came through shuddered under the weight of something massive. She could almost feel its eyes boring into them. "Get behind me!" The walls felt as though they were closing in, carrying the echoes of strangers' screams, loud, mingled with hollow laughter that seeped through the cracks of her sanity. She could feel it, variations of pain scribbled across the very essence of the air, the aura thick with grief. Suddenly, a faint trickle of light broke through a window, illuminating a path but also revealing the true horror left suffocating in the shadows. There were faces, twisted and contorted, pinned against the walls, their mouths opened in silent screams. "Mommy!" her daughter wailed, her voice a piercing arrow against the cold. Lily's mind churned. These weren't just shadows, they were a warning, a cry for help. She was not just fighting for her children. She had stumbled into something bigger, something that had buried itself within this forsaken place. And as the door splintered under the creature's weight, revealing its intention to take all, an overwhelming thought crashed through Lily's mind. There was a price to survival. What would they become if they escaped this time? The light flickered again, and in that heartbeat a sliver of hope created a terrible knowledge. Something must be done, and not everyone would make it out alive. With the door finally giving way, shadows began to pour in, inching closer like a gathering storm. What would she choose? Sacrifice or survival? And what unseen horrors awaited on the other side of her choice? Lily's breath hitched, a paralyzing fear cascading over her as the door splintered, shadows oozing in like a suffocating tide. The faces trapped in the walls seemed to stretch, mouths forming silent screams that vibrated within her. This was not just a nightmare. This was a reality she never wanted to face. She looked down at her children, their wide eyes reflecting her own terror. "Listen to me," she whispered, her voice hoarse and trembling. "No matter what happens, I need you to trust me. We have to make a choice. Are we going to fight or run?" "Mommy, I'm scared," her daughter cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know, baby, but we can't let fear win." As the shadows crept closer, the creature outside let out a low growl, a guttural promise of what was to come. Time warped and twisted. Every heartbeat echoed an urgency. There was no more room for hesitation. Lily steeled herself, hands gripping her children tighter. "If we run, we fight together. If we stand, we may lose everything. But if we run, we have to be brave." Now, with a fierce push, she tore open a different door on the far side of the room, leading to the narrow escape route. They raced through the opening, a torrent of adrenaline coursing, just as the monstrous figure lunged into the room, teeth bared, primal fury evident in every muscle. "Go!" Lily screamed, shoving her children through the doorway and following right behind them. They stumbled onto a darkened staircase, descending quickly, their footsteps echoing against the cold concrete. The unyielding growl grew fainter as they ran deeper into the abyss. Emerging into a subterranean level, the air shifted. It smelled different, stale, yet a hint of something sharp clung like a warning. They burst into a wider space, yet amid the newfound darkness, Lily felt a flicker of hope against her racing heart. "Where are we?" her son whispered, clutching tightly to Lily's hand. "Just keep close," she urged, scanning the walls as the heartbeat of panic thudded in their ears, echoing like a countdown clock. They were not free, not yet. Shadows moved in the corners, whispering secrets, promising danger. But there, a faint light flickered at the far end of the chamber. A door, it beckoned them like a beacon of hope. They rushed toward it, shadows flickering behind them, hungry for their warmth. "Mommy!" her daughter cried just as the creature's snarl resounded through the dark space, desperation laced with the promise of fulfillment. Fear surged within Lily. They had to reach that door. "Almost there," she shouted, determination fueling her legs, the exit pulling them closer. But something pulled at her like an unyielding force, dragging her back. She could feel it, the darkness clawing, ripping at her. "I can't." In that heartbeat, time warped again. She stumbled but quickly steadied herself, glancing behind. The creature lunged once more, eyes gleaming with savagery. "No!" she shouted, thrusting her children forward, resolute. "Run!" In a burst of pure instinct, she stepped out, a barrier between them and whatever horror pursued them. She would sacrifice her safety, or they would pay the price. But her children hesitated, caught in the tendrils of fear, watching their mother face the inevitable. "Go!" she pushed, summoning every ounce of strength, every drop of love. "Now!" With a frantic scream of a mother's defiance, she wrenched away from the darkness clawing at her mind. The sirens, faint in the distance, began to return, pulling the shadows back just long enough for her children to hesitate and then run through that door. "Mommy!" They turned to look once more. "Go! I'll be right behind you." The lean obsidian form darted then, just as they reached the door's threshold. If it was light they wanted, she would give it to them. With the shadows closing around her, she tore her own energy free and plunged into the primal darkness, grasping for control. "Stay away from my children," she roared, her voice reverberating through the room. The shadows recoiled, the beast faltered. Suddenly the light burst brighter through the door as her children toppled through the entrance, safety flooding their faces. They had made it. Adrenaline coursed through Lily as she gathered the last remnants of her resolve, casting a vengeful gaze toward the horror that had stalked them for so long. With a roar of energy birthed from unstoppable love, she lunged for the door, sprinting her heart out, summoning her courage until she reached the light, slamming the door behind her, feeling the shadows wail and crash against the surface. The sirens grew louder, mingling with the light of the outside world as the arms of the police pulled them into the warmth of the day. "Mommy, you did it!" her daughter cried, relief washing over her. Lily collapsed against her children, a tide of warmth mingling with the chill of the dark escape. "You're safe now, I promised." As the officers encircled them, assessing the frantic aftermath, Lily gazed back at the darkened doorway, knowing there still might be whispers of darkness lurking, but at this moment, love shrouded them. They wouldn't just survive. Together they had conquered. "Let's go home," she murmured, wrapping her arms tightly around them, thankful for another chance, even as shadows receded into the distance, far beyond. But they would not let fear defeat them. They would live. They would love. Because when love burns bright enough, shadows never stand a chance. Thank you for joining Lily's harrowing journey tonight. If you're hungry for more tales that give you the chills, you need to subscribe now to support the channel. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let others enjoy these heart-pounding stories. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about the ending. Did they truly escape the shadows? What awaits in the darkness? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support matters.